What's up, everybody? It's me. It's PLD. And look at that tattoo over there. It looks so great on you. You're very dedicated to our brand, aren't you?
Right? I
Far
shaved my
more,
head and got a tattoo. I'm ready to go.
far more than I had ever been. I can't think I'd have your level of commitment, my friend.
It feels so weird that I have to balance this.
Don't move.
Oh, there I am.
What happened? Oh, it's gone.
I got to remove.
Oh, what's up?
Welcome to Class Action, people.
This is Class Action. And what is Class Action? Well, it's a show where Jarvis and I go a little crazy for a little while in the stir crazy environment. But we take two items and we take two franchises. We start putting them up against each other and a battle to the death to see after who's going to win between two franchises, two actors, two performers with our 5 custom-made categories.
That's right. And today we are pitching 2 movies against each other that are very similar in some ways, but totally different in others.
And here, I'm going to show the posters. I'm going to show posters. I got a little story to tell you when I do these posters. Okay. We'll just show the posters first, and we'll go back. It's going to be Bohemian Rhapsody, starring Rami Malek, versus Rocketman, starring Taron Egerton. Both very cool. I mean, they both came out a year within each other. Both about 70s rock stars, basically musical biopics about 70s rock stars.
Yep, same actors. Well, not same actors, same characters in there. They have the same director.
Yeah, which is funny. That way, kind of the same director. Get into that, though, for the most part. But both singers, they're friends.
They're not both singer. One's Fletcher.
I like what you did there. But I want to jump back real quick to the story. Then. Okay, I saw these posters. You're kind of seeing these posters, and probably people out there like, those are not the posters I ever saw for these movies.
I love these.
And that's due to Richard Eric Jarvie.
I love these.
We started Class Action a while ago. Now, I don't remember what episode. They were like 21, I think, or something like that. That's 21 actually seen versus the 8 or 7 that we recorded and never. Some they're hidden away in the.
There's a lot of B material.
The bunker in there. When we actually get so famous that we have a Blu-ray or something, we'll have those as the bonus features.
Yeah, we will.
But either way, I'm rambling. Those posters, Richard R. Jarvie always wants to find the most ridiculous alternative posters you could find, like that are not typical posters.
It's not about ridiculous. It's just I like these artistic, fan-made posters that are very subtle, but give the meaning of the movie in a great way. Sort of have there's something big that's not a photo, just something Photoshop that sort of. Yeah, it's the artistic approach.
It is a very artistic. That is true. It's like you never see these posters on the wall. You never see there's always a big release of posters that the studio wants to show how they want to show the movie. But you find on Google or something, you'll find these images that are just completely off the beaten trail, like the Bohemian Rhapsody one.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the sunglasses and the face. You got the Freddie pose, the thing, Rocketman. It's Elton John's face. They're all like really. You look at it, you're like, that's kind of a cool poster. So Jarvie was all about that at first. I admittedly was hesitant. It wasn't that I resisted completely, but I was kind of like, I want to make sure people understand what movie we're covering, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm all in now. Like I'm the one who finds the posters now. A lot of times I get excited. I can find one like that and go, Jarvie's going to love this one. Because I love him too now. And I actually am all on board. It makes it very unique brand. I wish I could credit the artist. I can never usually find the artist's name or whatever. So if you're ever watching out there and you want to let me know that you did this poster, I will put your name in the credits and be very excited to showcase you because I love your work.
Yep. So. They're both, I think they might be my favorite posters that we've had on the show.
Yeah,
like handmade posters. They're real. They're both on point. I couldn't pick which one I like more though.
Me either. I love people who do this. I love looking back on it. I've actually started looking even beyond the show. Like I start doing my on Twitter. I do my Harris stunts and things like that. And so when I talk about movies I'm watching there, I do the same thing there now to try to find the coolest posters. I'm like, oh, that one's got a good one. I'll use that one. I get disappointed when I can't find a good one. Like I'm like, oh, I gotta use a typical one. That sucks.
I'm gonna be so disappointed if you don't find one.
Exactly, that's what it is. So, well, either way, Class Action here. We are on the Action Industries YouTube channel. I want to always thank Ben Bateman and Andrew Guy for giving us a little slice on their YouTube universe. We appreciate that, guys. Love what you're doing. So take a look at what they're doing. They're basically running the weekends now. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. They got shows. They got Action Unfiltered on Fridays, which is a general stream. They have the greatest movie ever made, which today's episode in a little while is going to be. They're doing Point Break today.
Point Break. Yes, Ben's favorite. Well, now he's number 2.
He kind of had it.
Number 1.
The longest time it was number 1. Recently, he did say something like, "It's kind of up there." He's kind of pulling back on it now, but it's definitely his favorite childhood movie. So I'm interested to see him go back and tackle that. I've been loving The Greatest Movie Ever Made. I mean, you know me. You and I are AMA buffs. We love Action Movie Anatomy, and this really is the spiritual sequel to Action Movie Anatomy. It's gonna be interesting to see post quarantine whether we get Action Movie Anatomy back, Action Movie Anatomy proper, because I'd love to at least, if nothing else, get a proper goodbye of nothing else.
Yeah, same here. There's something. I know they're talking more about doing these, laid back at home, doing this sort of not a structured show, but there's something special about a studio show. You show up, you dress up. They've been talking about it a lot, but to me, I still want them to have one show where they're doing it in a studio environment. I don't know. It makes the show different. And it makes it more quality.
Well, I don't disagree. But I think
in a different way, quality in a different way.
I think they're going to do that. So I think the idea is like even afterwards. I think, but it's more about wanting to claim ownership of their property in terms of their to do it more on Action Industries. So I think they will go back to try to find a studio that kind of way, maybe rent a space or something. I don't know. I haven't really talked about it, but as far as that goes, but I would like to see that too. I do like. I mean, it's definitely a nostalgia for me seeing AMAI. So hopefully we can at least get a goodbye, a good proper finish. Yeah. So that'd be cool. But yeah, they've given us this spot on it as we expand out the Action Industries brand, and so we definitely appreciate that. Should we talk about our upcoming show? Or should we wait to the end?
I think we should wait because we haven't had time to lock it down yet. You want to announce it now?
I'll tease it. I can tease it. I'll tease it now. I know we're talking about it. Feels like we should just go ahead and plow through. We had, as some of you may know, we did do a live stream, our first ever live stream of Class Action a couple of weeks ago on a Sunday night, late night. We had guests PJ Campbell and Rachel Silvestrini. It was kind of cool. We had people in California, people in New York, Mr. Jarvie in Estonia. I mean, all live stream. That's why it was a strange time, like 1 o'clock in the morning or 2 o'clock in the morning my time. But we got to cover the Kevin Smith Music Universe, and we ranked the Kevin Smith Music Universe. We loved that opportunity so much that we wanted to do it again at some point. I feel like we made this decision that we're going to have our normal show on Saturdays, like 3 times a week, and wait to a live stream where we do some kind of ranking where we can get guests in and rank them, because that was a lot of fun to do.
Yeah,
we got a big one coming up. I have at least one guest. I'm going to reach out to a couple other people for second guest possibly, but we're going to have a big guest coming up, and I don't have the date yet, but I'm thinking it's going to be early May, so maybe May 3rd, maybe that Sunday, maybe
we really need some more hair on the show is all else.
We do need some more hair show. I'm going to say it right now. I got our friend of the show, friend of the Action Industries, Mark Riley. Mark Riley is going to be on Class Action. And of course, if we're going to have Mark Riley on, what else should we talk about? We're going to rank the live action Superman movies. So look forward to that. I'm going to say May 3rd is my tentative date. I have to lock that down. Mark, you already agreed to come on. We just have to agree on date and time. But I'll get that back to you as soon as I know. So we don't know what we're doing next week, but we know what we're doing weeks from now. Yep. So that's how we roll on Class Action. So, but anyway, let's get into this week's episode: Bohemian Rhapsody versus Rocketman. We should talk about we'll do a little brief, not review, but we'll talk about the movies. I will say, I wanted to bring this up. I brought this up we were pre-gaming. I almost feel hypocritical about doing this episode because I hadn't seen Rocketman yet before this week.
That's crazy. I'm so surprised that you hadn't seen it before.
Right, because it's right up my alley. I don't know how I missed it necessarily. It's a matter of time. I missed it. Was in the theaters, and then I had it in my queue. I never really just got around to it. But Bohemian Rhapsody, on the other hand, I had seen. I mean, you see, I'm a huge Queen fan. For Queen, my favorite band of all time. Freddie Mercury, my favorite singer of all time. So I saw that movie when it came out a couple of times in the theaters. I got it on Blu-ray. I watched it a billion different times. Yeah, so I know I'm going to call it right off the bat. And obviously in this kind of show, I am a little biased. I'm not going to lie. I'm going to try to put my biases aside. Because I will say also is that I love Elton John nearly as much. He's definitely one of my top 10 artists. So it's not like I'm putting up Queen against a band I don't like or an artist I don't like. But when it comes down to it, I always look at the reviews for Rocketman. And it seemed like everyone they had to compare it to Bohemian Rhapsody. And I get why they did. It makes all the sense in the world. 70s rocker biopic.
And so close to each other, same time, almost overlapping, same characters in there, same directors.
Yeah.
But there's this one crucial thing that this gets talked about a lot. One of them is a musical. The other one is a film about music.
Right.
Bohemian Rhapsody is not a musical.
Right.
This is like an age-old argument people have been talking about. What is a musical? What is not?
Right.
Rocketman is a musical. Clear cut.
Absolutely.
Drama.
And I gotta be honest with you, Rocketman uses the Elton John songs to tell his life, which is a cool concept. But at the end of the day, a lot of people don't know this because it's never been made into a film. Although I've heard it might eventually. I don't know. Queen has a musical based on their music called "We Will Rock You." It's been on non-Broadway, it's been in the West End. It's been it's toured America. It's fun. It's ridiculous. It's stupid. I'm not gonna lie. It's stupid, but it's like a fun stupid. It's a very big satire, but that would be more musical. But it doesn't see. It's the difference is like if you combine Bohemian Rhapsody with "We Will Rock You," that's when you get Rocketman, because "We Will Rock You" has nothing to do with Queen's life. Oh, a little bit about, but that's another story for another time. But that's what the difference is. Rocketman uses the music to showcase his life, whereas Bohemian Rhapsody just showcases the music and shows the development of the music. And that's why I felt hypocritical, because I kind of got sick of reading about that. And after watching Rocketman, it's hard for me to describe it. It's hard because the two genres. It's hard to compare the two. I say that it's not hard to compare the two because it's easy to compare the two, but I feel like there's such a different styles and different takes on what the topic is that it's like you can like. I love both films. That's what I'm putting out there. I love both films. I don't need to say Bohemian Rhapsody is better than Rocketman. I don't need to say Rocketman is better than Bohemian Rhapsody. I enjoy both for exactly what they are, and they both move me, and they both are awesome, fun movies. So why? I guess it's my positivity is what I'm trying to shoot for. I love positivity. Why am I tearing one down? I feel like a lot of them tore. A lot of fans of Bohemian Rhapsody tore Rocketman down, and a lot of Rocketman fans tore Bohemian Rhapsody down. And here I am in the corner going, I love both. Let's watch them both, for Christ's sake.
And let's decide which is better.
Now let's decide which is better. I'm a hypocrite because I'm the one who pitched this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I love this topic. And I gotta say, the first time I saw first time I saw Bohemian Rhapsody, I was like, wow, okay, this is one of my favorites of the year. This is a 5 out of 5 movie. I saw Rocketman a year later. I was like, okay, this was really good. This is a 4 out of 5. Now I watched Rocketman again last night. They are both 5 out of 5 movies for me now.
That's awesome.
Rocketman does get better on rewatch. It's as you said, it's a very different kind of. You're not expecting that type of a fantastical movie or that deep into his own subconscious almost.
Right.
But when you've seen it, when you expect it, and you want to experience the movie again, it's a totally different experience, and it's way better. I gotta tell you.
And you say musical, and you know what? I'm gonna divert. I'm gonna call back and save that for our category because I have something to say about the musical aspect of it. But anyway, let's get into some other things that we do. Besides our class action brief for the week, where we get into our 5 categories, we have a couple of segments we like to do sometimes. Sometimes little fun little games we like to play. Some are better than others, but the 2 big ones we actually did 2 of the big ones this week. We're gonna do the first one, of course. What would Ed Harris play?
Yeah, about that though.
Let me guess, you didn't prepare anything, did you?
Yeah, I forgot.
It's kind of running bit, guys. I'd be surprised if he does prepare something. That's what I'm going to say.
I can wing it for Bohemian Rhapsody. I still haven't come up one for Rocketman.
I chose that picture because that's Ed Harris looking from Sweetwater. That's him looking like I could actually fit in a 70s rock star era with that. Look at those clothes.
Throwing that in my hair.
Did I do this? No, I did not do the same thing, by the way. I'm not like Christian Harloff going to be taking off the hat. Sure. Kim would kill me. Literally kill me. So, but anyway, what did Ed Harris play? Ed Harris is my favorite actor of all time. It's kind of become a bit now where people are going to fight back against me now.
He's your favorite?
It is. I think he never melted a performance. That's my favorite quote. He always makes a movie better. Every movie he's ever been in, he makes it just that much better. So what we do is we either replace somebody in the current film or we rate him a new character. And how he would make Rocketman or Bohemian Rhapsody better. So we can start with Bohemian Rhapsody.
Yes, we will.
We'll start. And you want to start? You got one good. Yeah, I want to see. I want to hear. I got to hear yours first. I'm going to hear yours first. I'm going to give this.
All right. So I'd have young Ed Harris.
Young Ed Harris, okay.
Young Ed Harris, and I'd have him as the truck driver that Adam Lambert played. Okay, so he's totally under makeup. He's almost unrecognizable. He's going in, he's looking back, He's going into the bathroom, I think. Yeah. But then, as he's walking out, I have an extra scene. He's walking out, and he's getting a phone call, and you can see that it's from some army, and that's way before he became a general. He enlisted after that, and after that, everything culminated in Alcatraz.
Freddie Hummel.
So yeah, General Hummel had he wanted to experiment. He wanted to try new things. He wanted to try what it would be like to be with a man. He got on with Freddie Mercury.
Freddie Mercury and Freddie Hummel. I love it. See, Jarvie, this is actually, I will say this now too. Also, this part of the bit has definitely evolved, and now we always do things. Jarvie always picks the most ridiculous aspects, and
he's always Hummel after that.
And he's always Hummel. And General Hummel, Francis Hummel, has at least 25 brothers that we don't know about.
Yeah.
That's where it is before it goes down. Well, okay, fine. For Bohemian Rhapsody, I wanted to throw him in as Ray Foster, the Mike Myers part. I wanted to see ridiculous with him and like through casing out. I mean, and I understand there's a joke there, but having him as a rock manager in that day, giving him that sweet Sweetwater hair at that point, I think it'd be great fun to have him being up against Freddie in those moments. Like, I'm in love with my. I know the joke is that Mike Myers is doing. I get the joke, but I would love to see him in that kind of role as well. So.
Would you have him do a British accent?
Oh, I absolutely would. Because I know he can pull it off. He's fucking
nice. For sure. I'm pretty sure he's played an Englishman before. Has he or has he not? You probably know because you watched all his movies.
Nothing specifically comes to mind that he's done actually an English accent for. He actually doesn't do many accents. He did a Russian accent for Phantom, movie with David Duchovny. Better attempt at a Russian accent than Sean Connery in Hunt for Red October, a similarly themed movie.
No, you should never knock down that accent.
I'm not knocking it down.
The way it is.
I'm saying it's a better Russian accent. I'm saying Sean Connery's non-Russian accent is phenomenal. It's phenomenal. But
it's almost like he's Russian. I thought he was actually Russian.
I thought that was the Highlands of Russian. Of Russia.
Right, Highlands.
Oh boy, we're getting off the tracks here. All right, what about Rocketman? Do you have one for Rocketman?
No, I don't.
You don't? Okay, well, I'll just no,
it's really tough to place him in Rocketman for me. I would have him as probably Elton's dad, but it's an easy one for him.
It would be. I would have him as similar role. I'd have him as the guy who I forget his name now, but the guy who, when Elton was first coming up, his first manager, the one who kind of like.
Oh yeah, they're really like sort of like suave dude who's like the super hippie sort of attitude. Yeah,
I love it. That's the guy I want to throw in there.
Man, sweet. It's a troubadour, man.
Troubadour, exactly. That's what I was saying. We can get intense if he needs.
I love that.
But that's what we do with Ed Harris this week. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed the bit. Let's move on to our second segment, our favorite segment that Jarvie loves to discuss because he gets embarrassed about what we call it. We call it the public defender, Jarvie. Why don't you tell us about the public defender?
You do this to me every time. I hate enjoying that. No, I don't hate, but I feel.
Because Jarvie hates public defenders. He's got a thing against public defenders. He thinks they're trash.
Hate the lawyers. No, I actually went to law school myself, so there is no hard feelings. Public defender. That's the bit that we do. Why do we call it the public defender? Okay, so usually in movies, not in real life, the public defender is portrayed as this beat down, underpaid, overworked, underprepared. Usually when he comes to court, he's underprepared. He's getting stuff as he goes.
He's got a million cases he's trying to do. That's part
and he has to come up with a quick list or some evidence on the spot without any preparation. So that's how we got inspired by this one, that we are doing top 5 or top 6 lists off the cuff that we have no preparation. So one of us won't know what the topic is. This time we have we have one for each. So I've got made up one for you, and you've got one for me.
It's because I'm a dipshit. I'm a dipshit. So we talked about this before. We've had it a couple of times where we kind of got reached out to some of our friends, like Maddie Kearns did one, Billy Belford did one, or we'd let them do it so that we could both do the same bit. And we had Maddie Gunner on last week for John Wick and The Matrix, which is a great show, by the way. I hope you guys saw that. It was a fun.
It was really fun.
I love Maddie Gunner.
So cool. It's so cool.
Maddie Gunner, salute you. But he gave one for us. We had to do top assassins in the movies. So I try to recruit that, but I always kind of tend to forget.
Top performances of assassins.
Yes,
he was really. I love that twist to it.
That is true. Very true. But regardless, I'm supposed to. Well, we've talked about like getting that from somebody. We recorded somebody doing that for us, but I was kind of forgetting like last minute, like last time, like, oh, I forgot to ask anybody again. Well, we'll come up with one for ourselves. So at least we have it. So.
But I think if we're doing one for each, we should do maybe top threes.
Yeah, top threes is fine.
Overdo it.
So we say top six, and when somebody does give it to us, we give our own top threes anyway. So we'll do top three. Top three is fine. Why don't we go? You want to go first? Why don't you go first?
I'll give you yours first. Mine's a really easy one.
Mine is easy too.
We're going to enjoy this. Give us your top three Queen songs in movies.
Okay, that's kind of very funny because my thing was exactly the same topic.
No,
exactly the same topic. Top three Queen songs in movies. I don't know how
we got to do a top six now.
We should do a top six. I can't believe we just did that. Like we legitimately thought, like, this is not a planned bit, people. Like I literally came up with the same idea. That is awesome, though. All right, top three Queen songs, top six Queen songs in movies, and there are a bunch.
I only know one.
You only know one?
I only know one in Shaun of the Dead.
There's a bunch.
That's the only one I know.
You don't know the biggest one?
Well, Bohemian Rhapsody.
That counts.
Fair.
No. Wayne's World.
Never seen it.
Never that really? You've never seen
that? There's a whole gap of movies that I haven't seen. I haven't seen Wayne's World. I haven't seen Bill and Ted. These type of adventure comedy movies sort of passed me by.
That is actually probably the biggest, like most famous use of a Queen song in a movie. It brought Bohemian Rhapsody literally after Freddie passed away. It's the reason like Adam Lambert, Mark Martel, all of America rediscovered Queen partially through Freddie passing away and partially because they put Bohemian Rhapsody in the Wayne's World movie. And the whole scene where Wayne and company headbang in the car to Bohemian Rhapsody, which is why the joke is in Mike Myers in Bohemian Rhapsody when he says something about like that's the song that's going to get teenagers banging their heads in cars kind of thing. But he's against Bohemian Rhapsody.
I did not get that reference.
Wow, this is funny, Jarvis. You have to watch Wayne's World. It's a funny movie, and that's the most well known.
I'm going to get destroyed for this one.
You are going to get destroyed for this one. I can barely associate myself with you right now. Just kidding. I love you, brother. But you said Shaun of the Dead, and I will say I agree. That is actually right there. That's my number one. That's my favorite one is the use "Don't Stop Me Now" in Shaun of the Dead. But Wayne's World is also another second one.
I've got one.
You got one. Okay.
Okay. So I said Shaun of the Dead. What's yours? Wayne's World.
I'll use Wayne's World, then that's fine because I can't use Shaun of the Dead. Even though Shaun of the Dead is my favorite, there's two Queen songs in Shaun of the Dead, by the way. There's "Don't Stop Me Now" and
weird one, though.
Go ahead.
Mighty Ducks 2, the end where they're sitting by the campfire, they're singing "We Are the Champions."
Okay, that's a good one. A couple other ones. There is one of the ones I like, even though it's a soundtrack moment and the music played, although it's not necessarily for Queen itself, but Grosse Pointe Blank. There's a sequence where Marty Blank he's at the reunion in Grosse Pointe Blank. John Q is looking at this kid, and he's like, he's realizing maybe like what he's missed in life. Maybe it's this very life-changing moment. Under Pressure plays in the background right as it's happening, and I've linked those 2 points together in my mind, and it's one of my favorite moments in connections there. So.
I have seen Grosse Pointe Blank, but I don't remember that scene. I've seen it once. I saw it when AMA covered it.
Yes, it's a great movie. You should watch it again. It's one of my favorite assassins. Actually, I remember afterwards I talked. Was it on air or afterwards? Either way, that's one of my favorite assassins. I should actually put him in my listing for Matty Gunner because that's one of my favorite assassins of all time. Such a great story there. All right. So we got one more. Do you even know anyone? One more? Actually, I can know off the couple that I can think of.
I actually do. I've got one obscure one that I just remembered when you talked about Under Pressure, and it's the same song, Under Pressure, and it's kind of a funny story. It's a coming of age sort of type of story. It came out somewhere around the 2010s. It's about a kid who's stuck at a hospital. He's got some disease, and there was other kids there, and they were sort of, I think they'd like break out at some point and sort of find themselves. And there's a really cool moment when Under Pressure comes on, and I remember that song very well. I can't remember the exact scene, but I remember that the song was there, and I immediately added that song to my playlist after that movie.
Such a good song. It's one of my favorite Queen songs of all time.
Yeah.
That says something. So I could go in depth about from song 1 to song ever the final album, all of them. But
Bohemian Rhapsody is my number 1 song of all time. Like, if I had to pick one song that's the greatest of all time, that's Bo Rap for me.
Well, it just actually won a poll in Britain, the greatest songs of Britain in British history. Just won again just this year, British history. It wins number 1 in those polls still all the time. So it's
the greatest song ever made. It really is.
Absolutely. I will throw back. I want to throw. I know people like Garth Harkness McMurray is probably watching this show right now, and I'll tell you, he's being very mad because we're not mentioning something. But I want to say that I'm not mentioning Flash Gordon or Highlander, both purposefully, because they actually did the soundtrack for them. So I almost felt that was like too easy a thing to make. So because Flash Gordon's phenomenal because of Queen's soundtrack. That's actually one of the biggest reasons why that movie has such a cult following, because the great Flash.
Wait, do we have a video for that?
I do. That's not on the stream, unfortunately. It's a different brand. But yeah, we do have something like that. Mike Kalinowski, we love
you. I heard this before.
And of course, the Highlander soundtrack is something that the Queen did as well. And again, that's a very famous soundtrack. That's one of the reasons why people have loved the Highlander, with the kind of magic and Princes of the Universe. But I haven't used those specifically for that reason, because I think it's almost too much of an easy cheat. But I will throw another couple of ones in there that I do like. They do use "We Are the Champions" at the end of Revenge of the Nerds in the 80s, and that's just a choir version, which is so kind of cool. It's so unique to the movie. It's like not even Queen doing it. It's like there's a part of Queen doing it, but then it kind of transforms into this like choir version. It's kind of fun. And similarly, another "We Are the Champions" used was in High Fidelity, another John Cusack movie, where it's a great movie where do you remember the movie?
I don't think I've seen it all the way from start to finish.
Okay, he's the record store owner. It's about he makes a lot of top 5 lists and things like that. And there's a scene where he talks to his ex-girlfriend, and he realizes that the guy he left him for, she hasn't slept with him yet, or something like that. And it's just like this moment of like, is there still a chance? And he walks out. He's got "We're the Champions" like blasting in his mind and playing it. It's a funny moment for me. I love that. I love that movie quite a bit. So. Those are one. I think I've done like top 7 by now, so we did enough. At this point. I have more I can talk about. That's one of my favorite topics. I have. It's
not a public defender.
Letterboxd list. It's not actually not public defender at all, because I actually have a Letterboxd list I was creating of my favorite Queen moments in cinema. So I've done a little bit of research on it, but either way, it was done in the spirit of it, at least. So I didn't look at that list. I got to still do it off the top of my head. So
no, it's still fun thing to do. But we are moving on to our brief of the week.
Brief of the week time.
Intro the categories that we have. First off, better lead. Well, self-explanatory. Both have great leads in them. Better soundtracks. We'll get into it when we get to that one. Better concert recreation. That's a good one. Yep. And better in-depth story. And there we will be discussing like which movie is more fitting to the artist as well. We sort of expand that category into a wider topic. And the last one, better relationships. It's weird to say better relationships, but which one had which one had the more impactful relationships? So we're not talking about romantic relationships only. We're talking about both, but we are talking all of them, because both have amazing platonic relationships in there as well.
It's weird discussing that. I mean, I'll get into it more when we get to that category. It's a little weird discussing this because these are truthful accounts. These are biopics. Like where usually we do better relationships is usually in a fictional account. You can actually, it's kind of they crafted this great, story relationship between these two characters. These are actually real life relationships.
I'm going off of actors.
But no, I get it. It makes sense though. But I just wanted to point that out, how it's a little bit different than the norms. They're actually. Or we can't confirm that this relationship is better than that one because this is real people. So these really happened partially. So, or at least these are versions of those relationships, we should say, because who knows? You never know. That's part of things, who's real or not. But either way, we'll get into that. We'll start with better lead, right? Better lead. Ron Mount and Taron Egerton. Do you want to go first? Or you want me to go first?
You go first.
Okay. Well, one won the Oscar, one didn't.
Yep. and I gotta say, this is. When Rocketman came out, I predicted that Taron Egerton, is it Egerton or Edgerton? I still don't know.
I would say Edgerton. I gotta say a little like in between.
Taron Egerton I feel like should have gotten a nomination. And I predicted he would win when I saw Rocketman.
Oh, really? Okay.
I did.
Well, I was joking. I jokingly said that Rami got the Oscar and Taron wasn't even nominated.
Was true.
But it was true. But I actually think that Taron had a hell of a performance, and I think he should have been nominated. I do think.
Did he win a Golden Globe for that?
I don't remember. I don't follow the Golden Globes as well as I used to.
I think he might have. You go. I'll just look it up.
You looked it up, yeah. But what I will say is that one of the interesting arguments they had, and a lot of people, he did, and he won it.
Golden Globe.
That's great. All right, that's great. I'm glad he got some because he did definitely deserve recognition.
Yep.
But what's interesting about this argument is I've seen a lot of backlash now, 2 years later, that Rami didn't win while Taron didn't, or Rami won that Taron didn't even get nominated. And a lot of it's based on the fact that Taron sings the songs. He actually sings the Elton John songs, whereas Rami didn't. And honestly, I think it's a bunch of hogwash. I'm going to say it right now. I'm not one who subscribes to that theory because I love Elton John. Elton John's got a great voice, great performer. But Freddie's voice is that's so uniquely good. Like that's what it's not when you look at Elton John songs, it's not about Elton's such a great singer. It's a great song. With Queen, it's a great song, and oh my God, Freddie's voice.
Yep.
So having someone emulate Elton's voice, that can be done, and you can get away with it. And not as big. I don't think that's as big of a deal. Having Rami Malek try to sing what many people consider to be the greatest rock vocalist songs of all time, and if he falls flat in any way, it doesn't hit that legendary height, you ruin the movie because that's part of what you want to hear. You want to hear Freddie fucking Mercury singing. And to that point, Rami Malek's voice is in there a little bit. They actually
it is. In there. I was waiting for you to get to that.
So it's not like he doesn't. They took some stems from Freddie's voice. They took some from Rami, and they filled in some gaps with Mark Martel, who is famously known for he headed up the Queen Extravaganza, Queen official Queen tribute band that toured. They were on American Idol. They were on Ellen. If you ever look him up, look up Mark Martel, somebody to love. And he sounds just like Freddie in a way. It's actually impressively how close he gets. They actually hired him to fill in some of the gaps. Now, a real true hardcore Queen fan like myself, I can kind of tell when it's Mark and when it's not. But if you're not, I'm not a remiss to say you might not even know what it is.
It is seamless, but the fact is that the voice is so Freddie's voice is so good that at some point you're like, okay, that is where they switched it in. You're so he can't sing that well, so it's sort of like a curse that he's that great of a singer. You're not Rami. I'm sorry, he's great. He's a great actor, but you just couldn't pull that off.
Right, exactly. But beyond just the voice,
there's so much more than just the voice.
I gotta tell you, I watched both movies, and granted, I know I've only seen Rocketman once versus Bohemian Rhapsody a bunch of times. But even despite having seen Bohemian Rhapsody a bunch of times, when I watch these movies, when I watch Rocketman, I saw Taron. I saw Taron Egerton playing Elton John. And maybe it's unfair that it didn't look like him or whatever.
I like that you're saying that. I'll get to you soon.
Okay. I mean, I feel like I didn't there's never a point in that movie where I went, wow, that's Elton John. It was close a couple of times, but it was good. Where I've watched Rami Malek, and this is someone who has watched Freddie Mercury's life stories, documentaries, concerts. There was a few moments where I could let myself believe I'm actually watching Freddie Mercury on screen, legitimately watching him on screen, and it's helped. It's helped. Also, I won't say this outright. The character who played Gwilym Lee, who played Brian May, is almost more spot on Brian May.
Yes, that is insane.
I don't understand how he didn't get any not Oscar nomination because it's not an Oscar part, but he's never got any press for it. Brian May's own kids thought that Brian dubbed in the voice. That's how close he got. It legitimately looked and sounded like a young Brian May.
It was scary. It was scary good.
So, and I think that actually helped when he had him next to him. That there are many times it seemed like the big climactic scene. I looked at it, I saw Freddie on screen. There's a couple times it didn't. Sometimes Rami's voice, as far as his speaking voice, I could get talked to. But if he didn't say anything at all, I legitimately was like, wow, his mannerisms, the way he moved. I'm watching Freddie Mercury, and that got me. So I'm going to say, hands down, the Oscars are right that if one of them had to win an Oscar, it's Rami Malek for me. Freddie, he was Freddie hands down. And this is coming from someone who obsessed with Freddie Mercury. So So that was the point for me.
That's a strong argument, and I 100% agree with you that Rami, he did everything. You can tell his movements, his looks, the way he speaks, the movements, the dancing, everything. That was crazy good, and you completely forget that you're watching an actor. Completely feels like you're watching Freddie. But that's a different approach to playing that role. Taron didn't set out to copy everything about Elton. Taron set out to reinvent and interpret his version of Elton John. That's why they had him sing. They had him sing his voice. He tried to emulate Elton, but he did it in his own way. And the first time I saw the movie, I was like, that's not how Elton sings. Now, the second time I watched it, I'm like, but that's not what I want to see, because I can hear Elton's concerts. I want to see an interpretation of him by Taron. And that's what got me. It's a way more subtle performance, because Freddie's it's a very flamboyant performance. I feel like Taron went more in depth with approached the character more subtly.
Okay.
That being said, I know what you want me to say, but I'm giving this to Taron.
Are you? Okay. Wow. It's not about one. I'm trying to stay biased there.
Way closer than you think, and part of it, maybe it's not even fair, but part of it why I'm giving it to Taron is because he didn't get nominated.
I get it. You're trying to make class action and make up for it, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Our little show is gonna Taron Egerton. If you're out there, I know you're watching us. I know you're definitely watching us. Feel great. Richard Eric Jarvis giving you the award that you should have gotten, the class action Oscar.
Yep.
You do make very, very good arguments. I get what you're saying, and I appreciate what you're saying, and I do. It does sway me a little bit. It does, that is a very valid argument. It goes to something in the categories we'll talk about later, the type of movies or as far as depth stories and stuff. It doesn't sway me enough because I still get, it's just the eeriness of I get goosebumps sometimes. I'm like, wow, that's actually fresh. And that's kind of I can't deny that as you're looking at the better lead performance. Something that gives me that kind of goosebumps. I'm like, that's going to win for me. But you're not wrong, and that Taron does give a good, interesting twist. But there's a lot of Taron in there. You're watching. It's like, okay, I can see, because I've seen enough Taron's acting, and I'm like, okay, that's him. I can see his acting. With Malek, you can tell that that's Rami, right?
From person, nothing. But I like the fact that I saw Taron in there.
That's fun. I will just throw it out there though that the argument that you made to me and the argument that I made is the very reason why I don't like the argument of whose voice is better. Right? Because Taron Egerton's voice is part of that role, whereas what they're trying to do with Rami Malek is make it more Freddie. So they're going to give it Freddie's voice. So that's why, at least as far as if you want to argue with me about Taron Egerton's interpretation versus whatever, that's fine. It's a valid argument to have. Give me that argument all day, and I'll be happy to do it. Just don't come at me with the Taron sings and Rami doesn't argument anymore. I'm done with that argument. So that doesn't work for me. So that's all I have to say.
Interesting fact, though, Taron got the role because of the movie Sing.
Yes.
Where it's an animated movie where animals sing, and he was the gorilla that performed "I'm Still Standing."
Mm-hmm. That's true. Very true. It made sense. And Elton loved him. Elton loved the performance.
Yes. He lived with Elton for a few months. He actually lived in his house. That's really cool. But we'll get into that sort of ties into another category.
But I will throw in another real quick tidbit that makes it another interesting segment is that Taron actually was able to sit down with Elton John and learn from Elton John and craft a character from a living person.
Exactly.
Rami didn't have that choice. Rami did get to sit down with Brian May and Roger Taylor from Queen and some of Freddie's close people, but it's not quite the same to get a third party.
But I think that's the reason why he didn't copy him so much is because Elton's alive and he didn't want to copy him 100%. He wanted to do something different for the role.
Oh, no, I'm saying it's interesting, different tacks that they had to do. I'm saying it's different takes that they had to take on it. So it'll be interesting to see if Freddie was alive, if the movie would have been different in a way. Because I think it would be. But that's something else we'll get into. You know what? Let's move on though. We're done with the first one. Let's move to the second, better soundtracks. This is a difficult one to make. Jerry, when I made the suggestion for a category, Jarvie kind of countered me and said, well, that's just basically whose music do you like better? And that's part of it, I guess, in a way. So I guess that does throw me. I'm obviously biased towards Queen, but it's not necessarily the soundtrack as far as the music goes. It's how they were used, how it was used in the movies. And that's where it comes into play here. I think you have Elton John's catalog, which was used because it's a musical. It wasn't just the songs thrown in there. They were remixed. They were done slightly differently. They obviously Taron singing more of it. So obviously reinterpretations, not just the songs. But they made some interesting choices. Some very big. I mean, there's a lot of different. Let me throw this out there now for both movies. Cries of inaccuracies. Things happening before they were supposed to. Like just throwing off the top of my head when Elton's sitting down playing the piano for the first boss that they got a job for with Bernie, he starts singing "I'm Still Singing," or that's why they call it the blues, which isn't written until like 1983. And here it is in like 1960s, and they're saying he's singing that song, or whatever. So a lot of inaccuracies about that, and Bohemian Rhapsody is the same thing, time differences, everything else.
I almost think the Rocketman should get a
pass
for that because it's a fantasy movie.
I get it. Absolutely, that's fun.
But I do agree that movies have to take liberties.
Right. So that being said, they threw these different times in there. So they threw these songs. I mean, hell, Elton was like a kid and he was singing some of these songs in a way, but it made sense, and it gets that pass for that exact reason. So that's a great usage of the soundtrack. I'm not going to lie. On the other hand, what Bohemian Rhapsody did, which I loved, what Bohemian Rhapsody did. More for the music file. They gave us some really in-depth, unreleased stuff. There's a couple of live performances that were released that are actually Queen live tracks that I've never seen the light of day. Fat Bottom Girls is a performance from like Paris that's never been released before. We got it released, or at least in this movie, we got actual new live Queen recording. We actually got, and this is a very interesting take to me. Some people don't even know this stuff. The first song they play, Smile plays a song called "Doing All Right," and then Freddie meets them afterwards, and you see them before he's joining the band. The first time he's joining the band. Brian May and Roger Taylor were in a band called Smile with a man called Tim Staffel. They reached out to Tim Staffel, and they actually reunited and made a new recording of "Doing All Right," the Smile song, in 2018, and then remixed it into the old original 1969 barely released track, and they mixed it together. We had a little bit of the original band getting together. That's how much they love this movie. They actually try to recreate a song, and you have Tim Staffel with Brian May and Roger Taylor from 1969, and then some from 2018 trying to craft it and polish it. And that, to me, that's an awesome curio. And also, like, again, it's for the music file in me. I love the aspect that they went to that kind of depth. For this movie, we're going to actually recreate our band from 1969 and try to see what we can do. I love that aspect of it. And then, of course, you get Live Aid, which we're going to get into in the concert recreation.
Yeah, we will.
But that is the soundtrack from Live Aid that's never been released as far as audio form. We're still doing videos here and there, but the audio format is great. So it's hard for me to. This is a very, very difficult one for me to decide because they both succeed so well for such different reasons. But if I'm going to be fair, I'm going to be unbiased. As far as for the movie itself goes, I got to give to Rocketman because of the fantastical developments. Though again, they used the music in a way to get the story across in a different way. Bohemian Rhapsody, love the music, love what they did with the music, but it's more of they showed behind the scenes of how they made the music. But that's not.
They did that for both movies, though.
But even more so for Bo Rap. Bohemian Rhapsody went much more in depth in how they created the music. Like,
more experimental, sort of like the sounds and everything. You mean that?
The studio aspect, you get to see them create the music. When Elton John created the music, it was basically him sitting down at a piano and doing it.
That's just my point. I feel like Bo Rap had this like this flamboyant way of making music using these experimental things in the studio, but Elton just sort of he's looking at Jamie Bell and the songs for you, and he's just creating this epic song on the piano as he's reading the words, and that's Elton. That's how he created music. He saw his words, and it just came to him. That's like the creative genius in him, how he created the music. That's why they work so well together.
I will argue, and I just gave it to Rocketman, but I will argue you did what you just said, that the scene for Freddie, that was Love of My Life. He writes it about Mary, same type of thing, and yet they juxtapose that with his homosexual lifestyle. Like he has Paul Prenter in there making a pass at him right after he wrote this song for Mary, and he rejects Paul at that point. But it's just that's that. So we have that bit of piece of Bohemian Rhapsody, what you're talking about, Elton John. Then you also have the Bohemian Rhapsody stuff. You also have the "We'll Rock You" riser moment where Brian May gets, come on, they're sick of waiting for Freddie. Let's just get up and let's give them something to sing, to participate in.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So it's a creation of the music, which I love. But that's not the soundtrack. That's why I'm giving it to Rocketman still. As far as development of the music goes, I give that to Bohemian Rhapsody not 10 times out of 10. But the actual use of the music itself is a subtle difference, which is why I'm giving it to Rocketman. But a very subtle difference. But only because they remixed it and the whole like "I'm Still Standing," the whole moments where they actually used it as a musical. It almost in a way, it's almost unfair because I might be convincing myself to change because as I'm talking about that.
Yeah, you're stepping on the nail because "I'm Still Standing." I think that's a key word. That's if you had to pick one song out of both movies, for me, "I'm Still Standing" has this incredible message that I never saw before. In Bohemian Rhapsody, there's is it "Nobody Wants to Live Forever"?
Who Wants to Live Forever? Yep.
Who Wants to Live Forever? These two songs in both movies are sort of these defining songs that, and it's not Bohemian Rhapsody. It's not the greatest song ever that makes its mark for me. It's "I'm Still Standing" and "Nobody Lives Forever."
Yeah.
I'm Still Standing. I'm picking. I sort of approach this topic in a different way. "I'm Still Standing" has a stronger message for me because we see him getting dragged through everything, and the fact that he's still standing. Which is unfair because things happened to Freddie that didn't happen to Elton, but the message is still there.
I agree. I will just point out the reason why I keep swaying myself. So you're going Rocketman, definitively?
I'm going Rocketman because of "I'm Still Standing."
Okay. I will say that
you're swaying yourself, though.
I am swaying myself because the reason why I'm swaying myself a little bit as I'm talking is because, in a way, because of the approach they took to making Rocketman, it automatically gives an easier nod to the soundtrack because the soundtrack has to be done in such a way that's going to be involved in the movie more because it's a musical. It's singing the song in the musical, that they're using the musical songs to tell the story, whereas in Bohemian Rhapsody they're just using the music as a vehicle to tell the story. Like it's about the music. Elton John uses the music, but that's not Bohemian Rhapsody's fault. Because Bohemian Rhapsody wasn't intending to be a musical. You know, you see what I'm saying about the subtle difference there?
I do.
So in a way, it's almost kind of cool that what they did with. I'm not gonna switch back. It's a close call. I'll stay with Rocketman because of what I said. Because I said initially. But I do think it's also an unfair comparison. Almost now that I think about it.
There is more music in Rocketman, but the fact that the way they use the music in Bohemian Rhapsody in the studios and only in concerts, it makes the music more special, though.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that.
It's so even less, you feel more. You get more tingles, sort of.
Right, I get that. So, all right, I'll stick with Rocketman because that's the decision I made. Although it's tough, it's a tough call. So, but we're running a little short on time. Let's move on to better concert recreations. Okay, this is an easy one for me.
This is an easy one. This is Bohemian Rhapsody. Not even discussion needs to be had here.
Not much. I mean, not to be said. It's kind of cool. I mean, this is where it's unfair. A little bit unfair to Elton John because
I agree.
Elton John, they have the Troubadour, which is a big moment in Elton John's career, but it's got that fantastical element of him, lifting his legs up and the whole thing. And they have the concert he's pushing out down at Dodger Stadium where he's doing that thing.
Flies off.
And he flies off, and it's kind of cool recreations, but they're not as in depth. Queen has moments throughout the show. They have in Madison Square Garden. They have him in Edinburgh. They do these little montages, but the fucking tail of the tape is Live Aid. And not only is it so well done, it's so meticulously recreated. If you want, you can go on YouTube and find videos where it puts them side by side.
The Pepsi cups, everything is
every movement, every facial tick. Like they recreate it, and some people say, "Well, why bother? I just watch the movie." I get that to a degree. Why you watch the concert itself? But it's such a still. It's still to me such a an accomplishment that they were able to recreate that moment so much and give it such in-depth feeling. You pan to like Mary and Jim Hutton on the side, like just their eyes, like just totally in love. The family, the Bob Geldof in the scene, like
when they show Freddie's eyes, the flare, or sort of they're very close. You can see the crowd from his eyes.
Right, exactly.
I love that shot when.
And there's this great moment at the end, and I love the end of the film on that recreation concert. At the very end, they pause it slowly, and it's subtly done in a movie that's not very subtle, and about a band that's not very subtle, about a person who's not very subtle.
Mm-hmm.
You have the band with the crowd out in the background, and he's a shot from behind. You see the three of them. You see Freddie, and Freddie kind of walks off first. He walks off first, almost disappears, and the three members are left by themselves in a way, just subtly, just briefly.
Mm-hmm.
And then the band walks off with them, and it's very subtle. I don't know if it was intended, but that gave me an extra like, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and that's part of the concert to me because they kind of come out. That was it. That was their big. Now, granted, it's a liberty they took. They had a tour after Live Aid. They did a whole 1986 tour, and they performed at Wembley again 1 year later. It's a very famous concert in history, but that was their last tour. Was later, so it wasn't that far off. But that was it. Live Aid recreation was so much done. It's an easy Bohemian Rhapsody for me.
And the entire movie is built on the Live Aid concert. The movie is paving its way towards this final moment. I can even imagine, like, we have the Live Aid concert that Freddie gave now in HD. That's pretty much the difference. With better camera movements, it's in HD now. You can see better. Rocketman didn't have they didn't build up to have this one big recreation of a concert. That's the reason why the concert and everything, all the storylines, all of your emotions sort of explode at that final concert.
Absolutely. So it's easy call. I mean, maybe it was a little unfair to Rocketman in a way, but
life's unfair.
Life's unfair sometimes. That's right. So all right, we'll move on to better, more in-depth story.
Mm-hmm.
This is a very difficult category, again, because of the avenues they took. Why don't you go ahead and start with it? Because I started with better concerts.
You even mentioned it before, that Rocketman had Elton involved, and there's so much of Elton in Rocketman. I'm pretty sure this whole fantastical element that the movie almost feels like a fantasy movie is because of Elton.
Mm.
I'm quite sure that they meant it to be maybe a musical, but not as far left field as that is when he fell into the pool, sort of. We are breaking into a musical. So we are breaking into song at a moment when he almost feels like he's dying. Seeing these flashes of his younger self, and like you said, when he's like sort of skyrocketing on the arena. But if we're looking at Bohemian Rhapsody, we didn't have Queen, and we're just getting. Is it based on? Is there a book? I'm sorry, Queen. Freddie, I wanted to say.
Not Freddie. No book. This is all based on Brian Runner.
Okay. So again, it's kind of unfair, but I feel like Bohemian Rhapsody wasn't as gritty as I wanted it to be. I like the fact that Rocketman gave us really dirty moments from his life. Like, and then maybe dirty is not the right word, but we had the same character, John Reed. Like in Bohemian Rhapsody, he was a good guy. He was actually bamboozled out of being Freddie's manager,
which is not actually true, by the way. Just so you
know.
It's not actually true. They actually combined some of the characters. John and Queen parted companies mutually because basically John just couldn't keep up with Queen as far as like he was managing Elton, managing all these different artists. Queen wanted just more. They wanted more somebody specifically for them. That's all it was. They both signed off on each other. John had a big part with Queen's career as far as severing them from their original contract. But he only actually managed them for like 3 or 4 years. So, but either way, I'm sorry, stepping on your point here.
No, that's great points. Sort of lost my train of track though.
Sorry, I should shut up.
No, that's okay. Oh yeah, this Rocketman feels like it's it's like it's not a psychology. What do you call it when you go to a psychologist? It's a session. What's the word I'm looking
Session?
for?
That's
Not a session.
Therapy. It's a
Therapy. That's the word. It's the Rocketman feels like it's a therapy session for Elton.
Okay.
He's actually in therapy there, but it's also the characters in Rocketman are. I feel like they are made more cardboard. Okay. His father, his mother, there are these really negative characters, and we have these really positive characters, like John Reed as well, very negative. We have there are very black and white characters. There's almost no gray area. What I loved about Bohemian Rhapsody is that all the characters, they had their dark sides, but they show their lighter sides as well. I can't believe I'm going that far into Rocketman, but for that reason, it's Rocketman again.
You're going Rocketman?
Okay. I'm going Rocketman again.
That's fun. All right.
Well, I honestly didn't think I was.
Interesting. Swaying yourself. Maybe I'll sway you with my decisions, but I don't know.
Maybe.
I'm not sure. I will say that the funny thing is you mentioned the gritty, dirty moments in Rocketman, and I agree to a point. That was actually the biggest knock I've ever seen in Bohemian Rhapsody is that they didn't go too far into Freddie's lifestyle. Although I thought a lot of the criticisms were a little too harsh about that. They said that they whitewashed Freddie's homosexuality. I don't think they really did as much as you'd want to think they would, because it's not they didn't. So they didn't show Jim and Freddie having sex. They didn't really show anybody having sex. It was a PG-13 movie. I mean, Freddie laid with Mary Austin for a little bit, but there wasn't really any real sex going on. But the big deal is that while Freddie was definitely gay, Mary Austin was the love of his life, and that, like, I will see this as a Queen fan, having seen his entire career. If Mary was the most important person in his life, hands down. He had a loving relationship with Jim at the end of his life after they met and they fell in love and they lived together. And maybe part of it's because I don't see it in the public lifestyle, but after reading so many books, so many documentaries, so many different things, Freddie left the bulk of his estate to Mary. The house that Freddie lived in, Mary owns now. It's every. So at the end of the day, Freddie actually had quotes in the magazines. Back in the day when you could actually have quotes. Like, it's funny, people are like, was Freddie gay or bisexual? I don't know, because you did have quotes that were out in magazines, but they weren't such a widely distributed. Like nowadays on Twitter, somebody says, I'm out, they're out to the world in like 2 seconds, and like it's all around the world. Actually, legitimately quotes where he said, like, I've had relationships with men and women both, but no one has ever come close to replacing Mary. Because Mary's always the one for him, and even like if it's not a sexual thing with him, that was like his love. So it's like it's not exactly necessarily cutting things out as much as it just highlighted the thing that Freddie has always said in his life, and Brian and Roger have also said that Mary to him was his best friend, his most important person in his life overall. But it's not trying to knock down his relationship with Jim, because they actually treat that very well, I thought, at the end.
Yeah, when we get into the next category, that's when I'll talk about
get into that. And I thought it was very well done. So I don't think that was gritty. Now, was it sanitize some things? It did a little bit. I mean, but like it's a difference between wanting to have a PG-13 movie and having an R-rated movie. But for being a PG-13 movie, I thought it did well. It didn't show Freddie was on drugs. Freddie was doing alcohol. They're having partner. They just didn't like have to go in depth in every single detail. But that's part of the category you're saying is more in-depth story. I do think it had a storyline that went well, but it was more about. And here's part of the problem too. Part of the problem I will say, Rocketman is about Elton John. Bohemian Rhapsody is about Freddie, but also about the band. So you have 2 hours to develop to one person, and 2 hours
arguing the next category
to do characters in the band as well. And it definitely focused on Freddie. Freddie's definitely a highlight, but we're developing Brian, Roger, and John and that relationship with Freddie as well. So it's definitely much more of an in-depth thing. But I will also take this time, and somebody brought up, I almost had a different category called which one fit the artist better. And the way I can say it best is I give this to Rocketman is definitely more fitting to Elton John. And that's the difference between Elton being alive and Freddie being alive. If Rocketman was a movie made by the more straight-laced Bernie Taupin, for example, I think that's what you'd get. You'd get Bohemian Rhapsody. If you know what I'm saying. Like Rocketman, it would be done much more straight-laced, much more a musical biopic. This is what happened kind of thing, because how was this straight man, and not, I don't mean that in a sexual term, I mean the straight man, not as fantastical. That's the movie you would get. Whereas with Queen, with Freddie being passed, you have Brian and Roger, who were both fantastical to a degree. They have a big part of Queen, but they're definitely far more straightforward rock and roll men too. So they have a much more of a straight-laced approach to the film. So which one has a more in-depth story overall to me? I think Bohemian Rhapsody is more in depth because Elton uses the fantasy to mask some of the things sometimes.
Yep, absolutely. Yes, I agree. I agree with that. I do agree with that. That's just like I said. The characters are very black and white in Rocketman. That's true.
It's more flash and substance. It's more flash than it is substance to read. Even though people will tell you, people argue the other side to me. They'll argue the other way from me. But to me, I always thought it was more about the gimmick of the music rather than the actual story. Rather than the story of the music, if that makes sense. So I thought Bohemian Rhapsody was actually a little more in depth. Now, in depth is maybe a poor word choice because it definitely was surfacey at times, but I felt like I knew Freddie and Brian Roger John more after Bohemian Rhapsody than I knew Elton.
Okay, it's just the opposite for me.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, it's just Taron and Jamie. I can't remember the name of
Jamie Bell.
Jamie Bell, but what's the character's
Bernie
name?
Taupin. Bernie Taupin.
Bernie. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. I feel like because of them two, I know them better than I do Freddie.
Okay.
And Brian.
Okay.
But that leads us to the next category, though. So you're going with Bohemian Rhapsody.
I'm going to go Bohemian Rhapsody barely, but it's interesting one. So okay. All right. Better relationships then. Let's get into that.
Yep. What do you got?
This is tough because you got platonic, you got familial, and you got love. Bohemian Rhapsody. I'm going to start. I'm going to come back. Rocketman. To me, Rocketman had the typical. I felt like, and if it's true, it's hard to dock it for it. But I had this whole like families holding him back. Like I have to have that bad family lifestyle in a way to spur the genius on. A lot of characters with his mother being a pain in the ass, with his father being not loving. And I did some research afterwards. And there's a lot of dispute from Elton's like half brother, from other people that they didn't like how Elton's father was depicted. They didn't like how Elton's first manager was depicted. Like the manager's son said that he was nothing but supportive of Elton. And there's a bunch of people that came out and said basically Elton made a movie that for whatever reason seemed to knock down the people who actually supported him best at the time. But so I felt like a lot of the relationships seemed like to be cliched to a degree to me, except for his relationship with Bernie Taupin, which was handled extremely well, and quite possibly the best out of all relationships in both movies. Like it was a straight-laced character. They had this moment where Elton tried to kiss him, and Bernie like very gently rejected him. It was a great scene.
It really was.
When Elton tosses Bernie out of his life to a degree, but then Bernie comes back at the end, and it's just a great brotherhood story that we're suckers for. I know that we're all suckers for the brother-father moment. The love relationship like him and John Reed was very well depicted. It's kind of interesting to see because John Reed, like you said before, John Reed is a villain in Rocketman, kind of, whereas he's more of a hero in Bohemian Rhapsody. But he's a lesser character in Bohemian Rhapsody. He's a lesser character in the Queen story. But it's very well done, Richard Madden. Great. I love the fact that we should bring that up now. Richard Madden. The Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones playing John Reed. You got Richard Madden playing John Reed. And Littlefinger, Aidan Gillen playing John Reed in Bohemian Rhapsody. But at the end of the day, I love a lot of the characters in Rocketman. But when you shift over to Bohemian Rhapsody, you still had the familial, the struggle with the father. Obviously, didn't like a lot of what Freddie was doing, but I felt like he was done a lot more subtly and a lot less cliched. It was not like he had a supportive mother, but it wasn't like all or nothing. It wasn't like this big dramatic row over like, I hate you, you're out of my life, you're not my son, and Freddie's not. It was just more of like a subtle, like you could tell that there was tensions, but there was still a loving family overall. And at the end, he had a great moment where his father like recognizes what he's done and he's accepted it and everything else. They're more subtle but well done. His friendship with the band, outside of John Deacon, who didn't get much of a relationship issue. You had moments with Freddie and Brian having their moments. You had moments with Freddie and Roger having their moments, especially when it comes to like after post glorious mustache, I would say, where Roger and him had some rose, and Roger and him had some like when where Freddie realized he was alone. He wants him to stay over for dinner, and Roger's like, I can't. I got a wife and kids. Freddie's, oh please, but then Freddie would attack him for not being faithful to his wife. Like he did a little barb to Dominique. Nothing more important than loyalty, right, Dominique? And Roger's like, careful. And all this stuff like that. But then they come together at this brotherhood moment at the end where Freddie announces that he has AIDS. at Live Aid, which is a dramatic moment. I'll come clean again. They took liberties, and you had to take liberties at 2 hours.
I think that's fine. I think it worked for the story of the movie. They had to have that way.
I think that the scene where Freddie tells the band is probably similar to how it happened. It just was shifted a little earlier to be a part of Live Aid. That's all it was, and I'm okay with that.
You can tell that he knew before when they start weaving into the age storyline a bit for like sooner, and you can tell Freddie has this look that he sort of knows. He's suspecting that he has it, and when he goes to the doctor, we don't know for sure that's it could have been a second opinion or something. You know, it's you just see his face. He's talking to the doctor. Nothing else happens really.
But then we also have. The relationship with Mary is well done. I thought overall you get to see Mary's side, and there's other criticism he's gotten. Some people have this criticism where like there's this dialogue where he said, or he goes, "I think I'm bisexual," and Mary just goes, "I think you're gay," and people have like trashed that dialogue. And you know what? That's exactly how it happened. Like there's like documents like Mary Austin has said this is exactly how the scene went down. Like with that dialogue actually in place. So the relationship, I think the relationship felt more true overall in Bohemian Rhapsody. I think Elton and Bernie Taupin are better than anything in Bohemian Rhapsody as far as relationships goes. But overall, the more relationships I felt better with Freddie and everybody else, to be honest with you. Does that make sense? So I'm going to go with Bohemian Rhapsody.
Okay. Yeah, for me, I'm comparing Freddie and Mary and Freddie and Elton and Bernie. These are the like two strongest and the driving forces of both movies. Although in Bohemian Rhapsody, I do like the fact of how little they show Jim Hutton, but how effectively they used him. Like the first time he comes in after the party, they have this conversation. Sort of like he's just come back to me when you like yourself again. I think that's what it was. And through the entire movie, you can tell Freddie is at war with himself. He's at war. He's fighting. He's very emotional. He's expressing himself through the music. And when they reunite with Jim Hutton, you can see how he soothes Freddie. He's at peace now. He's not at war. And when they're both meeting at the trailer, they're like, "This is my husband. This is Jim." Sort of like this together. It makes I'm getting tingles just talking about it. I loved how effectively they used Jim Hutton, and I love the actor. I can't remember his name. He was a perfect fit for the role. Like I don't know if he looked like him in real life, but the way his eyes, they were so sincere, so loving. Sort of is exactly what you wanted.
Aaron McCusker is his name.
Yeah, I've seen him before, but I never knew his name. So
no, I will hop in there. But I didn't actually mention the Jim Hutton relationship as part of it. I did concentrate more on the Mary aspect. But Jim Hutton was well done. Now, Jim Hutton was definitely the end of it. The choice of having Jim Hutton in there, it does have a hard time with having to do with the Live Aid, ending the show at Live Aid, ending the movie at Live Aid. Jim Hutton wasn't really around until around Live Aid anyway, so it's hard to have him further on without the completely revamp. I know we said you can have liberties, take liberties, and that's fine. Maybe they could have done that at some point, but it seemed like it would have overbloated the movie to have him more at that point. So I agree with you that they used him very effectively for the limited time they had, and I love Freddie and Jim's relationship. It centers Freddie at the end of a time where he really needs it. He really needs that solid rock. And they showcase Jim as that solid rock, which is another reason why I think it's very well done between the two of them. I love the fact that at the end of the story, Mary and Jim are watching at Live Aid together at the side of the wing. Mary's watching, and she touches Jim. You know, I say, like, this is what we have. They're both almost like sharing him as far as not stupidly, not sexual or anything. That's just Mary is his longtime companion, and Jim is the person who's going to be there for him the way that Mary can't be anymore. Just like going back to the whole light sequence between Freddie and Mary. When Mary lived next door to him.
What do you want from me? Almost everything.
Yes, exactly. Oh God, almost everything. So, and I see where Freddie is like flashing the lights on. Look outside the window. And like you tell he really wants her in his life somehow. Just have a drink with these, even if it's just on the phone, something. And Jim is going to give it to him at the end. And that's what it's a great, loving, touching moment.
And I do love how Mary's cast as well. She's not this distractingly attractive woman. She's a real person, and that makes her more attractive.
I love Lucy Boynton. I got a crush on Lucy Boynton. I'm not going to lie. She's phenomenal. So all right. So where do you go on this?
So it's the toughest one for me yet, because Bernie and Elton, that is the driving force of the movie. And I feel like Jamie Bell is, well, obviously he's getting overshadowed because Elton's the lead, Taron has the lead role, but I don't think that Taron would have given a performance as strong as if it wouldn't have been Jamie Bell. Their chemistry together is insane.
I agree.
Like, and the fact how they talk, it's like they say, we've never had an argument. And you can tell that that's Elton remembering the relationship that way. But when the movie goes, the movie contradicts itself because they are having arguments. Elton is arguing, he's yelling at him, and he's just looking, he's saying something really calm. This Elton walks away, and then comes back. I'm sorry, I know. They've had arguments, but I love the fact that Elton himself contradicted what he said. Sort of like all the movie contradicted itself. I think I have to go with. I can't. It's too tough. I have to go with Rocketman. I'm sorry. Wow. I almost weighed myself because of Jim Hutton, but Jamie Bell, it's his greatest performance I've ever seen. They play off each other perfectly. They're this yin to their yang, and you know what I meant.
Well,
I'm sorry. I have to. I'm trying to be unbiased.
That's what we're trying to do, and
this is where Jamie Bell's performance comes into play. Not Taron, not anyone else. He's just. I love that it's calming presence that he has throughout the movie.
Well, then I got something to tell you. We're a hung jury.
Really?
We're tied. We are tied, 5-5.
What are we gonna do?
I honestly say, you know what? We're gonna leave it. This is a hung jury. We gotta throw the case out. We're gonna have to try to retry it again, maybe another time.
I'm actually very okay with this.
I'm very okay with this. This is the first time it's ever happened. We actually have a time where we have both. I mean, we weren't like all. It was like all of us. It wasn't me all Bo Rap and you all Rockman. We actually went back and forth and did good arguments. At the end of the day, sometimes these cases can't be made. It's a hung jury. Gotta throw this case out. We're going to try again. So the other day, Bohemian Rhapsody and Rocketman are both winners, I think. And that's the way it should be sometimes. Both movies are great. You should watch both movies. Enjoy yourself with some music. That's what I'm going to say about that. I love both movies, and I'm okay.
Very, very different, yet very similar. Again, it's a contradictory thing to say, but it's so true.
So this is the first time we're having the hung jury. So hopefully people will accept that. If people are really opposed to it, well, then maybe we won't have to. We'll have to try to figure out a way to break a tie later on. But I think I like the idea of having a hung jury if need be.
I do too, and in this particular case, very much so, because I couldn't decide which. If I had one and the other, I honestly couldn't pick one or the other because I can break them down into categories. That's not always 100% what makes the movie better or worse.
Absolutely.
It's more emotional sometimes. And these movies make me feel different things in different ways.
Absolutely. I got it, man. I got it. So, all right. Well, that's our show for the week. Definitely went a little bit over time than usual, but that's okay. Richard, where can we find you?
You can find me, Richard Eric with a K Jarvie, on Facebook and Instagram. And you can find me on Class Action Weekly on Action Industry.
Boom, 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 boom. Great. And you can find me at Paul_Denuzio on Twitter. You can find me on Class Action Weekly with Richard Eric Jarvie, of course. You can find me on the Call to Action podcast with all of us C2A people, where I do Chilled Action, which is a weekly interview show with the competitors on a movie trivia schmodown. If you don't know what that is, go find that out. They're also very cool. You find me helping to run the Patreon, patreon.com/Team Action, all things Ben and Drew. They're doing a lot of great tiers, help keep me employed. It's a lot of fun. Sometimes you can find me popping up on those streams as well sometimes, because they recently I've been hopping on and interacting with them as well. Finally, I will also say I've opened my own YouTube channel, PLD Projects, which I hope you go subscribe to. I've got over 100 subscribers now, 110, I think. So I'm excited about that. I've been doing a weekly show on Star Wars and a weekly show on V, a great show from the 80s. I do have one show that's in development that hopefully we'll talk about soon. I mentioned once or twice. I'm hoping to have the first episode out in May. I did tease it last time, but in May, I'm hoping for it in May to have that. I also have another show in development. I have to figure out what I want to do with it. might be closing down the Star Wars show after Clone Wars is done for a little while temporarily and trying something else for a little bit. But we'll see. I'll talk more about that later. That being said, Class Action, weekly basis. Next week we'll make up something else. I don't know. We might do Gladiator versus Braveheart. That's a possibility.
I've been championing that for a while now.
I've been championing for a while, so that might be something we do. If anybody had any suggestions they'd like to see, I know some people want to do a Fast and the Furious thing. I know some people wanted to do other shows. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I've had some people talking. But if you want to leave them in the comments or get a hold of me, I'm definitely going to listen to anything. I always like to find more topics to talk about. So that being said, we salute you, and court is adjourned. Ladies and gentlemen, court is adjourned.